Brittany, teen librarian from the Madison Branch, shares a chapter from Garth Nix' book, Shade's Children. If you like the book, it is available electronically through the Nashville Public Library website.
Shade's Children by Garth Nix. Video archive. Interview 1759, Ella. A razor blade gave me freedom from the dorms. A small rectangle of steel, incredibly sharp on two sides. It came wrapped in paper, with the words "Not for use by children" printed on the side. I was 11 years old then, 8 years ago, which means I am probably the oldest human alive. 5 years past the time when the overlords would have wrenched my brain out of my skull and used it in one of their creatures. Actually, I guess Shade is the oldest human around, if you can call him a human. Shade would say that it wasn't the razor blade that gave me freedom. It was what I did with it. The object is irrelevant. My action is the important part. But that blade still seems important to me. It was the first object I ever conjured, or created, or whatever it is I do. I remember when I first realized what a razor blade was, staring at that faded page of newspaper I found. The newspaper that had lain in a wall cavity for 40, maybe 50 years, long before the overlords decided to use the building as a dormitory. And there, in black turned gray on white turned yellow, an advertisement for razor blades with a picture perfect for me to put in my head. It took 3 months of practice for me to build that picture into something real, a hard, sharp object to hold in my hand. Then, one day, it wasn't just a thought. It was there in my hand. Real, sharp. Sharp enough to cut the tracer out of my wrist, to make escape a possibility. Well, I did it. Only 1 in 10,000 gets out of the dormitories, according to Shade. Most can't find anything to cut the tracer out or don't have the wits to disable it in some other way. Even when they do find something sharp, most don't have the guts to slice open their own wrist, to reach in and pull the capsule out from where it nestles between veins and bone. Even now, when I look at the scar, I wonder how. But it's done now. I've been free for 8 years. I don't know why Shade wants to record this. I mean, who's going to see it? Who cares how I got out of the dorms? Of course, I really do know why Shade records, and who's going to see this video. I've been here with Shade for 3 years, but he's been around for nearly 15, ever since the change. There's been a lot of children in this place since then. I've seen their videos, but I'll never see them. You sit in the dark, watching their faces as they talk through their brief lives, and all the time you wonder what got them in the end. Was it a winger striking out of the sky? Trackers on their heels till they dropped and the myrmidons came? A ferret uncoiling in some dark hole where they'd hoped to hide? Now you're watching me, and you're wondering, what got her? Chapter 1. Goldeye crouched in a corner under 2 bird-shit-caked blankets, watching the fog streaming through the windows. 16 gray waterfalls of wet air cascading in slow motion, 1 for each of the windows in the railway carriage. But the fog had only a small part of his attention, something his eyes looked at while he strained his ears trying to work out what was happening outside. The carriage was his 3rd hideout that day, and the trackers had been all too quick to find the other 2. They were out there now, whistling in the mist, whistling the high-pitched, repetitive notes that meant they'd lost their prey. Temporarily. Goldeye shivered and ran his finger along the sharpened steel spike resting across his drawn-up knees. Cold steel was the only thing that could kill the Overlord's creatures. Some of the weaker ones anyway, like trackers. Not myrmidons. As if on cue, a deeper, booming noise cut through the trackers' whistles. Myrmidon battle sound. Either the force behind the trackers was massing to sweep the area, or they'd encountered the forces of a rival overlord. No, that would be too much to ask for, and the whistles were changing too, showing that the trackers had found a trail. His trail. With that thought, Goldeye's change vision suddenly gripped him, showing him a picture of the unpleasantly close future, the soon-to-be now. Doors slid open at each end of the carriage, forced apart by metal gauntleted hands 4 times the size of Goldeye's own. Fog no longer fell in lazy swirls, but danced and spiraled crazily as huge shapes lumbered in, moving to the pile of blankets. Goldeye didn't wait to see more. He came out of the vision and took the escape route he'd planned months before when he'd first found the carriage. Lifting a trapdoor in the floor, he dropped down to the cold steel rails. Back in the carriage, the doors shrieked as they were forced open, and Goldeye both heard and felt the drumbeat of myrmidon hobnails on the steel floor above his head. Ignoring the new grazes on his well-scabbed knees, he began to crawl across the concrete ties, keeping well under the train. The trackers would wait for the myrmidons now, and the myrmidons were often slow to grasp what had happened. He probably had 3 or 4 minutes to make his escape. The train was a long one, slowly rusting in place between Central and Red Tree stations. Like all the others, it was completely intact, if a little time-worn. It had just stopped where it was all those years ago. Not that Goldeye knew it as a form of transport. It was just part of the fixed landscape to him, one of the many hiding places he moved among. Goldeye didn't have memories of a different time, except for the hazy recollection of life in the dorms, and his escape with two older children, both of them long since taken. At the end of the train, he got down on his belly under the locomotive, steel spike clutched in his fist, white knuckles showing through the ingrained dirt. Beep, 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 beep. The trackers were on the move again, spreading out to search. It sounded like a trio on each side of the train, coming towards him. Goldeye pictured them in his head, trying to get his change vision to show him exactly where they were. But the change vision came and went when it chose, and couldn't be controlled. This time it didn't show him anything. But a memory arose unbidden, a super-fast slideshow of trackers flashing through his mind. Thin, spindly stick humans that looked like half-melted plastic soldiers. Bright, bulbous eyes, too large for their almost human eye sockets. Long, pointed noses that were almost all red-flared nostril. He could smell a human out with those noses, Goldeye knew, no matter where he hid. That thought was foremost as Goldeye listened again, but he couldn't work out where the trackers were, so he edged forward till he was almost out from under the train and could get his knees and feet up like a sprinter on the starting blocks. It was about 30 yards to the embankment wall. If he could cross that open space and get up it, the trackers would go past to look for an easier way up, and myrmidons were very slow climbers. At this time of day, that left only wingers to worry about, and they would be roosting in City Tower, avoiding the fog. Then the trackers whistled again, giving their found signal, and myrmidons boomed an answer, frighteningly close. With that boom, Goldeye shot out like a rabbit, jinking and zigzagging over the railway lines, frantic with the terrible realization. The myrmidons had crept under the train. He could hear their boots crashing onto the gravel around the tracks as the huge creatures jumped down from the lead carriage, the bass sounds of their battle cries joining the frenzied whistles of the trackers. Heart pounding, face white with sudden exertion, Goldeye hit the embankment at speed, reaching head height before he even needed to take his first hold. Then, as his feet scrabbled to take him higher, he reached out and slipped. The fog had lain a film of moisture on the old stones of the embankment, and in his panic Goldeye had run to one of the hardest spots to climb. His fingers couldn't find any cracks between the stones. Slipping, his feet touched bottom, and he added his own wail of despair to the awful noise of the creatures behind him. Soon the myrmidons would surround him, silver nets shooting out to catch him in their sticky tracery. Then a winger would come to take him away, back to the dorms, or, if he was old enough, straight to the meat factory. As Goldeye thought of that, bile filled his mouth. Then he turned to face the myrmidons and hefted his steel spike. "Kill me!" he screamed at the tall shapes approaching through the fog. "Kill me!" The myrmidons stopped 10 yards away. 7 of them, a full maniple. 7-foot tall, barrel-chested monsters with long arms ending in spade-shaped hands. 6-fingered hands with thick, oversized thumbs. These myrmidons wore golden-green metal cloth armor that was all spikes and flanges, heavily decorated with battle charms, sparkling even through the fog. Crested helmets enclosed their heads, and black glass visors hid their faces. If they had faces. They certainly had mouths, but they were silent, now that their target was trapped. The trackers were quiet too, clustering in their trios behind the line of myrmidons. Their work was done. "I'll make them kill me," Goldeye thought desperately as the myrmidons, toying with him now, raised their net guns. He tensed himself, ready to lunge, hoping to strike one behind the knee, be irritated enough that it would kill unthinking. "Hey you! Shut your eyes and duck!" It was so long since Goldeye had heard a human voice that he almost didn't understand, till a fizzing, sparking object sailed past his head and bounced toward the myrmidons. He ducked, curling himself into the embankment, face pressed against the wet stone. For a second, nothing happened save the masked growl of the myrmidon's surprise. Then there was a brilliant flash, smacking his eyes with red, even through closed eyelids, and his bare neck with sudden heat. At the same time, something hit his back, and he flinched. "Grab the rope," called the voice again. "Hurry up! The flash will only hold them for a few seconds." A rope! Goldeye uncurled and saw the knotted end hanging above him. His eye followed the rope up the embankment, up to the fog-wreathed figures on the road above the railway. Humans. 3 of them, all older and larger than he. For a moment he hesitated, glancing back at the blindly groping myrmidons. Then he started to climb. And that's the first chapter of Shade's Children by Garth Nix. To find out what happens next, go to the link in the description to check out the ebook through Overdrive from your Nashville Public Library.